Hey, this is Pastor Charles from Bux-Mont Baptist Church coming to you today with another episode of My Story Monday. I want to switch it up a little bit this week and give you a story about a very well-known missionary named Mary Slessor. We've had some great folks on the show past couple of months. We got some really great folks lined up coming up, but wanted to also not forget about the Christian history, the people who have come before us and dedicated their life to Christ, who've come to Christ and just really followed him with great vigor. So I want to share the story about Mary Slessor. This was actually written up in the Christian History Institute not too long ago, and it's a very inspiring story. Originally, it was written up by Dan Graves in the Christian History Institute just not too long ago. So Mary Slessor was one of the most well-known missionaries of the 19th century. She had a hard childhood growing up in Scotland, and this hard childhood, she said, really prepared her for the life of a missionary. Her father was not very nice. He was abusive to her and her mother. She was working in a mill at the age of 11, and as she got a little bit older, she grew into being so proficient as a weaver that she was able to manage 2 rooms inside the mill, which was really admirable. Showed she was a hard worker, and she wanted to better herself as she was growing up. So what she would do is she would go to school in the evening. She attended night classes, and when she was even so tired after working all day in the mill, she'd attend night classes and she would stand up in the night classes. She would stay awake. There's stories of her father being so abusive and so mean to her and her mother that in the middle of the night, her mother would sometimes throw her out of the house just so she wouldn't have to take a beating from her father. And then when she'd get into the street, being a young girl, she'd have to fend off, people who were drunk or people who were in the street at night. So she's a really tough woman. And Mary became a Christian when a woman actually held her hand over a fire and warned her about hell, saying, hell is worse than your hand getting burned in a fire. So you better come to Jesus. So she became a Christian after that, recognizing at the wrath to come from her sins if she didn't commit her life to Jesus Christ. So she became a Christian and immediately jumped in wholeheartedly. She began leading Bible classes for children, and she took groups out to the countryside, church groups out to the countryside for picnics and activities as well. Just really dedicated herself and her life to Christ once she became a Christian. And there's a story that even in her life when she became a Christian, she was trying to do the work of God. There was a street gang that was trying to intimidate her and get her to stop. And so they threw mud at her, and they swung a weight. There's a weight on a rope round and around where it got closer and closer to her face. And she was praying. She was praying to God about the situation, and she refused to run or duck or even flinch when they were swinging this weight in front of her face. And so the head of the gang was so impressed by her, about her faith and her courage, that he then had all of his gang members go to her meetings and her Bible studies. And during that time, as similar today, there are stories about missionaries, letters from missionaries read in different churches. And so when she heard about being a missionary, she decided to apply to the mission board of her church to be a missionary. And she was accepted as a missionary. And then she actually left her home country of Scotland and sailed to Africa in 1876 to be a missionary in Nigeria. And Nigeria at that point in time was different, as much of the world is today, different than it was in 1876. At that period of time, there were tribes that often sacrificed people to different gods. And going to Nigeria was really putting her life on the line. And repeatedly throughout her time as a missionary, she rescued slaves and women from impending death. She fought against the ungodly practices at that time. What they would do at that period of time in Nigeria is if they're going to put somebody on trial, it was sort of like the Salem witch trials here in the United States, they would feed them poison. And they say, well, if they died, then they must have been guilty, right? Or they'd pour oil on them, right? And so they would use these type of omen things to determine if somebody was guilty or not. If a woman's husband died, they could, put her on trials to say, did she kill her husband? And if she got sick or she failed these omen trials, they would actually break her legs and throw her inside a pit with her dead husband's body and bury her alive. So, it was really a horrible place to live in a lot of regards, and a place that was so in need of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And they even had cannibalism, in Nigeria at that time. And so she fought diligently to share the gospel with folks, to stand up for righteousness of God and the goodness of God, preach the gospel through word and deed. And she really taught the Nigerians, the people she was reaching out to value life. Life has value, and continually throughout her life, she pointed to God as her strength. She's quoted saying, God and one are always a majority, in terms of her strength, saying, God and one, if one person is obediently following God, obediently in relationship with God, they're the majority, right? It doesn't matter how many people you're against. It doesn't matter the situation or the problems or the issues. With God, we are a majority, right? And that's what Mary Slessor said. Towards the end of her life, she heard about a war going on in Europe. She got word of the war, World War One. She got word of World War One, and she was absolutely devastated. As her story is told, she heard of World War One. She passed out. She fainted in church service. Then she fainted again, and she lost her voice. She wasn't really able to speak, and she died actually on January 12th, 1915. And it's recorded that her last words were in prayer. She was praying in the Nigerian language, and in her last words, she said, "Oh God, release me. Oh God, release me." She had run the race well. She had served the Lord, followed his calling, been obedient to his word and his ways, and just wholeheartedly ran after him and shared the gospel. And when it was her time to go, she said, "Oh God, release me." So that's the story of Mary Slessor. And just wanted you to be encouraged with her story on My Story Monday. Thanks so much for watching. If there's anything we could do for you at Bux-Mont Baptist Church, please reach out to us. We want to be a blessing to you. We want to help you grow in your faith or come to faith in Jesus Christ. Have a great day.